Imagine a guy who didn't just collect mansions and private jets, but collected the darkest secrets of the most powerful people on the planet.
3 million pages of documents, 180,000 images, and 2,000 videos. Jeffrey Epstein is shocking in its size and its content.
For decades, Jeffrey Epstein ran an untouchable empire of abuse right out in the open. But how did a college dropout scheme his way to the absolute top of the financial food chain? And what exactly is hidden in those 3.5 million pages of recently unclassified documents that the government just dumped onto the internet? We are getting into the full, uncut timeline of the Jeffrey Epstein case. Born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York, Jeffrey showed strong mathematical talent in school. He briefly attended the Cooper Union and NYU, and then became a math and physics teacher at Manhattan's elite Dalton School in 1974. There, he impressed a parent, whom he later contacted, and soon Epstein left teaching to work in finance. Epstein joined investment bank Bear Stearns in 1976 as a junior trader. He rose quickly, despite some red flags. By his late 20s, Epstein was a bounty hunter who tracked down stolen funds for very rich clients. This proved lucrative. By 1984, he had become a millionaire. In 1988, he founded his own firm, J. Epstein & Company, managing money for billionaires. His most famous client was Leslie H. Wexner, founder of Victoria's Secret and other brands. He managed much of Wexner's fortune and reportedly benefited enormously from that arrangement. Epstein used his charm and wealth to mix with the elite. He owned mansions in Manhattan, Palm Beach, and a private island in the Caribbean, and maintained an extensive social circle. Notable figures, from politicians to royalty to celebrities, were seen with Epstein over the years. Flight logs and emails later showed Bill Clinton took multiple trips on Epstein's private jet in 2002 to 2003, and Prince Andrew was a guest at his island. Social association alone is not proof of crime. When documents were made public, people named in them generally denied any wrongdoing. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Epstein became fabulously wealthy and well-connected, but in parallel, he was quietly building the means to recruit and abuse vulnerable young women and girls. The first major public alarm came in March 2005. In Palm Beach, Florida, a father complained that a 14-year-old girl had been molested by a massager who turned out to be Epstein. The girl's mother and other local teens reported that Epstein paid them for sexual massages at his estate. By spring 2006, the Palm Beach Police Department, PBPD, had gathered multiple complaints against Epstein from underage victims. According to a later DOJ report, PBPD began its investigation in 2005 after the 14-year-old's family came forward. Grand jury and first indictment. 2006. That count was unrelated to the minor. In July 2006, a Palm Beach grand jury indicted Epstein on a charge of solicitation of prostitution involving a minor. The public learned very little at the time, and Epstein was required to register as a sex offender following his 2008 guilty plea in Florida. Federal leap year investigation, 2006 to 2007. Almost simultaneously, federal prosecutors in the Southern District of Florida took an interest. In early 2006, the FBI opened Operation Leap Year to investigate sex trafficking by Epstein. Assistant U.S. Attorney Anne Marie Villafana led the federal case. By May 2007, the FBI had gathered evidence and discovered additional victims, and Villafana submitted a draft, 60-count federal indictment against Epstein. This proposed indictment would have charged him with sex trafficking dozens of minors. She presented a lengthy memo to her supervisors, showing Epstein's actions and the laws he broke. Plea deal negotiations, 2007. Instead of immediately charging him, prosecutors began negotiating. In July 2007, federal prosecutors offered Epstein a deal if he pleaded guilty only to 2 lesser Florida charges and served time there. The U.S. Attorney's Office would drop the broader federal case. This meeting with Epstein's lawyers took place on July 31st, 2007. Under the agreement, Epstein would have to serve at least 2 years in Florida jail and register as a sex offender. and victims would get a mechanism to seek civil damages. By September 24, 2007, all sides had signed a non-prosecution agreement, NPA. This secretly ended the federal investigation in exchange for Epstein's guilty plea to the 2 state counts. Florida plea and sentence, 2008 to 2009. Epstein formally pled guilty in a Florida court on June 30th, 2008. He admitted to 1 count of soliciting prostitution and 1 count of soliciting a minor, 14-year-old, for prostitution. On July 7th, 2008, he was sentenced to 18 months in jail. Epstein ultimately served about 13 months, released in July 2009 under a work release arrangement. The DOJ's Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, later summarized these events, published November 2020. It confirms that Palm Beach police first interviewed the 14-year-old in 2005, that prosecutors planned a larger federal case, and that the July 2007 deal was offered. That OPR report and other sources show the basic facts. Epstein pleaded to state prostitution charges in 2008, served jail time, and, under the agreement, avoided any federal prosecution. The 2007 deal, called the Non-Prosecution Agreement, was highly controversial. Under its terms, the US Attorney's Office agreed not to prosecute Epstein for any federal crimes in Florida, including any co-conspirators, so long as he fulfilled the deal. The formal NPA document, filed in 2008, explicitly stated that the United States also agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein. In effect, once Epstein was locked up in the Florida jail, the federal case was over. Victim rights and secrecy. At the time, the plea deal was kept secret from Epstein's victims. Later, the victims' lawyers argued this violated their rights under the Crime Victims' Rights Act, CVRA. One victim, called Jane Doe 1, even went to court seeking to void the deal and force prosecution. The courts ultimately ruled CVRA did not give victims a way to undo the deal, and the case went up to the US Supreme Court, which in 2010 said victims had no remedy in this situation. Thus, Epstein's conviction and sentence stood. Release from jail, 2009. Epstein was released from jail in July 2009 after about 13 months, in part due to good behavior and work release privileges. He entered into a term of supervised release for the remainder of the 30-month sentence. After his release, Epstein kept a low public profile for years, though he remained in contact with Ghislaine Maxwell and others. His victims were upset and mobilized. The details of the NPA and plea are documented in court records and DOJ reports. For example, the OPR summary notes the 60-count draft indictment from May 2007 and that a state resolution was signed on September 24, 2007. It also describes the requirement that Epstein serve 13 months for the state charges. These facts are well established in official documents and media reports. Victims and aliases. The women and girls whom Epstein is accused of abusing have often been referred to by pseudonyms in court filings. For instance, court papers from 2023 list over 180 Jane Doe plaintiffs. One well-known victim, Virginia Giuffre, née Roberts, was about 17 when Epstein and Maxwell trafficked her for sex. Giuffre has testified publicly and sued both Maxwell and others. Another, Maria Farmer, also spoke out early, in 1996, long before the law enforcement action. Many other women, often still in their teens at the time, have told similar stories. We use only public names like Giuffre. Other victims are often identified by initials or Doe labels in legal records. Civil lawsuits. After Epstein's Florida release, survivors began civil actions. They sued Epstein and his associates to undo the plea deal and to get compensation. In 2015, Virginia Giuffre filed a defamation suit against Ghislaine Maxwell. Maxwell had called Giuffre's accusations lies. That 2015 Giuffre versus Maxwell case, filed in the Southern District of New York, was settled in 2017. Many documents from that case were originally sealed, but journalists later pushed to unseal them. Over the years, courts have gradually unsealed civil case filings related to Epstein and Maxwell, often after media organizations requested access. Other survivors filed cases invoking the Crime Victims' Rights Act, CVRA, arguing they were never told about the NPA. Victims challenged the plea agreement under the Crime Victims' Rights Act, but federal courts ultimately ruled that the agreement could not be undone after it had already been finalized. Key legal acts. In late 2023 and early 2024, a federal judge ordered additional documents from earlier civil lawsuits to be unsealed, though much of the material had already been referenced in prior reporting. Reporters noted that most of this information was already public. Courts have gradually released materials under Freedom of Information motions. As one news summary puts it, over 100 names connected to Epstein appeared in the unsealed records, matching many previously known names. CBS News emphasized that the unsealed docs did not contain a magical client list, but largely confirmed the pictures painted in earlier reports. In short, survivors' lawsuits have been a key part of the Epstein story. They produced valuable court records, some still redacted for privacy, and gave victims a voice. Virginia Giuffre's case and related filings helped bring to light the extent of Epstein and Maxwell's network. 2019 New York indictment. The case took a dramatic turn in 2018 to 2019 after decades of relative quiet. A 2018 Miami Herald investigative series by Julie K. Brown exposed details of the 2007 plea deal and its secrecy. A 2018 investigative series by the Miami Herald exposed the secret plea deal and reignited federal scrutiny, ultimately leading to Epstein's 2019 arrest. That reporting renewed pressure on prosecutors. Finally, on July 6, 2019, federal authorities in New York unsealed an indictment charging Jeffrey Epstein with sex trafficking of minors. This 2019 indictment in SDNY accused him of running a decades-long scheme to pay dozens of underage girls for sex and to transport them for sex. It also said the Florida NPA did not protect him from charges in New York. Arrest and suicide. 2019. Epstein was arrested on July 6, 2019, in New Jersey and transferred to the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, in Manhattan. His death quickly followed. On August 10, 2019, guards found Epstein in his cell, unresponsive. Officials soon concluded he had hanged himself. Multiple investigations by the FBI and Justice Department Inspector General eventually reported no evidence of foul play, ruling the death a suicide. Nevertheless, Epstein's death was shocking and left many questions unanswered. Since the defendant was dead, the criminal case against him immediately ended. Ghislaine Maxwell's prosecution, 2020 to 2022. Epstein's longtime associate and ex-partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, was arrested in July 2020 on related charges. She was charged in SDNY with multiple felonies, including conspiring to entice minors for sex, transporting them for sex, and sex trafficking. Maxwell denied wrongdoing. Her trial was held in November to December 2021. The jury found her guilty on 5 counts, including sex trafficking of a minor. On June 28, 2022, Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in prison, far longer than Epstein's own post-plea sentence. Maxwell appealed aspects of her conviction, most famously claiming that Epstein's 2008 NPA co-conspirator clause shielded her from prosecution. The Southern District of New York and the Second Circuit disagreed, holding that the clause covered only Florida federal charges, not Maxwell's New York charges. Maxwell appealed her conviction, arguing in part that the 2008 Florida agreement protected her. Federal courts rejected that argument, and her conviction remains in place. Thus, her conviction and sentence stand. After Epstein's 2019 arrest, authorities also opened inquiries in other places. For example, the DOJ noted it compiled materials from multiple cases: Florida and New York Epstein cases, a New York investigation of his death, a Florida case involving an Epstein butler, and various FBI probes. However, aside from Maxwell, no other major figure was criminally charged. Several associates, like the private pilots, masseuses, etc., cooperated with the FBI in 2019 to 2020, but none, besides Maxwell, ended up prosecuted. Contemporary news reports and court documents cover these events. The AP News timeline lines up the dates of arrest, indictment, and Maxwell's trial. The Maxwell trial and conviction are official SDNY matters, widely reported. Maxwell's post-conviction appeals and the Supreme Court denial in 2025 are documented in court records. These sources show that by 2022, Epstein's key co-conspirator was in prison, and that all legal battles over the 2008 deal had been decided against Maxwell. Epstein owned at least 2 private jets, dubbed the Lolita Express by the media. The flight manifests, first made public in 2015 to 2016 via court cases, showed many famous people flying on Epstein's planes. For instance, one passenger was Bill Clinton, who flew on Epstein's Boeing 727 4 times in 2002 to 2003. Prince Andrew is also listed on some flights. However, researchers caution that appearing on a plane log is not proof of any crime. As CBS News notes, the recently unsealed records contain many names, but many of those who had business or social ties with Epstein have denied any misconduct. In fact, ABC News confirmed that none of the known flight logs or other records shows Clinton or President Trump ever flying to Epstein's island. Associates and clients. Epstein's social circle was vast. Aside from those on his planes, documents have referenced many associates, business managers, masseurs, engineers, lawyers, and more. A January 2024 news summary of unsealed court files listed more than 100 people connected to Epstein, including business associates and even some accusers. Crucially, much of this information had already been reported in the media through earlier legal proceedings and public records. For example, Epstein's personal calendar and address books, released in past years, already named hundreds of contacts. No large hidden client list emerged. Investigative journalism findings. Journalists played a key role. The Miami Herald's 2018 investigation was a turning point. After Epstein's death, reporters obtained and analyzed court documents. In February 2026, ABC News reported on newly released DOJ files from the January 2026 dump, showing that just before the 2005 search, Epstein's lawyer had a private investigator remove over 100 items of evidence from his Palm Beach home. These included multiple computers, dozens of phone books, explicit photographs and videos, and other material. That evidence was never seen by police. The DOJ's Office of Professional Responsibility later said it contained potentially critical information. Some stories focused on individuals. For example, the New York Times, via a publisher's blog, published an investigation into how Epstein may have scammed clients, and ABC News dissected Clinton's involvement. Many news outlets have also written about the survivors' perspectives. All of these underscore that Epstein's crimes were systematic, not the isolated incident the 2008 prosecutors made it seem. Official reports and transparency. On the government side, the DOJ and FBI have released reports. The 2020 DOJO PR report, cited earlier, found that the hidden computers likely contained important evidence. In recent years, courts have ordered additional document releases connected to Epstein's cases following media and public pressure for transparency. On January 30th, 2026, the Justice Department announced that it had complied, publishing about 3.5 million pages of documents. These materials included case files from Florida and New York prosecutions, Epstein and Maxwell cases, OIG and FBI investigations, including those into Epstein's death, and others. The DOJ press release noted that over 2,000 videos and 180,000 images were also released. So far, reporters describe the new release as confirmation of what's already known. The DOJ itself said it erred on the side of over-inclusion, releasing pretty much everything collected, even unofficial submissions. It emphasized that redactions were only to protect victims' privacy. In fact, the release statement pointedly said no names of notable individuals or politicians were censored. DOJ even warned the public that some of the files are hearsay or false claims. For example, Some people submitted wild allegations about President Trump to the FBI in 2020, but DOJ said those were unfounded and false. In short, the official narrative is that nothing explosive about other public figures is hiding in these documents. We have presented the confirmed facts as found in courts, government reports, and major news outlets. Still, some areas remain unsettled or contested. Epstein's source of wealth. Official records say he was a successful money manager, notably for Leslie Wexner, and became rich through financial deals. Critics note Epstein's reported assets never matched his spending, suggesting possible hidden income. We have assumed only verified earnings, but the precise origin of some funds remains uncertain. Extent of crimes and other accomplices. Legal actions have implicated Epstein and Maxwell as core perpetrators. No other high-level co-conspirator has been charged in the US beyond Maxwell. Victims' civil suits alleged Epstein lent some girls to other men, but law enforcement has not prosecuted anyone else for Epstein's trafficking. No new federal indictments. It's possible additional offenders exist, but were never charged or identified. We stick to known outcomes. All named individuals beyond Epstein and Maxwell have denied wrongdoing, and there is no court finding against them. Flight logs and meetings. Many names appear in flight logs and calendars. One controversial item, a 2003 birthday card page, was reported to bear a Donald J. Trump signature. Trump denied ever writing it. The Wall Street Journal published the note, saying it was somewhat sexual. Then Trump sued the paper for defamation. We note this as a disputed claim. In fact, the DOJ later cautioned that some entries in the released files, including claims about public figures, are unverified or false. We therefore do not assert that any specific person is guilty of a crime just because a name appears somewhere. We rely on confirmed charges only. Circumstances of death. Epstein's 2019 death was officially ruled a suicide, supported by a medical examiner's report and FBI review. However, because he was in federal custody under constant surveillance, many observers remain skeptical. For our purposes, we assume the official finding is correct, as no court or report has overruled it. Notably, the DOJ's 2026 press release included materials from investigations of his death, but did not suggest foul play. Release of documents. The 2026 file dump was intended to be exhaustive. The DOJ claims it included all relevant materials from the federal cases. We have assumed this collection is complete. If anything was withheld, beyond legally protected items, like certain victim identities, it has not been publicly documented. Lawsuits by members of Congress to oversee this production have been declined by courts as outside their jurisdiction. Thus, we rely on the released corpus as the factual record for the latest developments. If you enjoyed watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you have any suggestions, please comment down below. Thank you for watching.